Okay, this is about complex numbers, and only the fun stuff, only the easy stuff. And we're not going to go too deep into these questions, okay? But you should be able to do some basic manipulations. And the basic premise is if you have a plus bi, where a and b are both real numbers, like as you know off the number line, I is the square root of -1, then this whole thing is called a complex number. This is a complex number. So this component is called a real number, and this part is called the imaginary number. Okay? And we talked about this a little tiny bit in class already, which the point being, if you have something like negative anything, like -14, you should convert it to 14i. And one important reason for changing this notation for you is if you happen to say, you know, square root of -49 times square root of -36, and if you don't do this properly, so what you're supposed to do is say 7i times 6i equals 42i squared, which is -42. But there would be the temptation to do the wrong thing, which is to put the 49 and the 36 together, take the square root and get the 42 without the negative. Okay, and the reason why is this rule that says you're allowed to combine these square roots only works for positive numbers. So square root of a times square root of b is square root of ab if a and b not both negative. Like you kind of get a pass, you get away with it for free if just a or b is negative, but if a and b are both negative, then everything collapses. And usually your high school or middle school teacher forgets to tell you that rule because there's no exercises that test whether you understand that or not. And so they just kind of brush that under the rug and they don't tell you about it. But there's a big exception to that rule. And so that's why you have to be very careful and always bring the i's out. Okay, so that was important, but that's not what the exercises here are asking today. They're asking very simple things, like, for example, I'm just going to make up one that's very similar. If you want to add two complex numbers, it's really easy. You just add the real parts, and you add their imaginary parts. Very easy. You just treat it like a regular old variable. So any kind of addition or subtraction of complex numbers, that's all you do. And what about multiplication? Well, multiplication is a little more fun. So let me see, all the way up to 27. These guys are all additions, so I'm going to change this underline now. 37, 39, and 42. These are all about multiplying now. So I'm not even going to have you do division. That's another technique. We're going to skip that, and we're only going to worry about multiplying these guys. So if you have a plus bi times c plus di, what do you think you do? Well, you FOIL it. First, outer, inner, last. So you just treat it like a regular variable at first, but then the problem is, what? AB plus BC times I, then you get minus BD, but that means this piece becomes real again. So I'm just doing this whole thing out to let you see that regardless of what A and B and C and D are, this is the technique, and so you can ignore all this. But you can go directly here. This is always the case. Alright, so when you're doing them by hand, you have the choice to either do the shortcut or do everything out slowly, and that's fine. So let me do some of the exercises that aren't assigned, like number 40. This guy squared. Well, when you square something, you just take the same one and multiply it by itself. Okay, and then you can FOIL that. First, outer, inner, last. That's 25 minus 16, 9. Okay, so that's the way you're to do those kind of exercises. And again, you can ask Wolfram Alpha these questions. Let's see how you would ask these questions. Okay, so let's see, one of your homework questions, well, something similar to one of your homework questions is 2 plus 3i squared plus 2 minus 3i squared. Hopefully it knows what I is. I think it does. It says, assuming I is imaginary, you use I as a variable, fine. The result is -10, but it doesn't tell you how it got that. So if you have an iPad and you buy the app, it's only a couple bucks and it shows you step-by-step directions. But you can force it to show you a little bit more by just doing a piece at a time. Aha! So this piece, if you work it out, is -5 plus 12i. Okay. And then what happens if I flip this sign? Can you see this? So I'm just typing this in and it's just giving me out this answer. Okay, so oh, this picture is kind of cute. It shows you in the real axis is here and the imaginary axis is here. So it means that the real part is -5 and the imaginary part is about -10. It's a little bit more. Okay, so that's how you do those exercises. And you can double check all of them on Wolfram Alpha. And so I guess you're good to go. Have fun with them.